And yeah, let's move on to Terry Funk. We also had another death in pro wrestling just yesterday before I was walking into pick up a friend of mine. Got the news that Terry Funk died at the age of 79. Terry Funk had been in ill health for quite a while. I didn't think this one almost was as shocking as the Bray Wyatt one, but all in all, like you talk about a guy that we talk about Joshi on this podcast quite
Yep.
frequently. It's become a cornerstone of our show. You know, Terry Funk was someone who had his eyes open on people, all different styles, everywhere in the world, and was one of the first people like with credibility that is essentially saying, "Hey, if you're not watching Joshi, you're falling behind." And he really drilled that in Dave Meltzer's head at the time in the '90s. He, you know, the times that I am familiar with Terry Funk is like, him in helping legitimize ECW at the beginning.
Yeah.
Him being Chainsaw Charlie, kind of like the crazed legend and all that, and just doing the wild shit. And I had no idea about like his actual great career when I was a kid. Like he was just some old guy that was
Right.
crazy or whatever, and
Right.
you could
Right.
do anything to him. But the more I kind of learned about Terry Funk, he's like, I loved like watching the setup with Flair and Funk in '89. And it's like you come out here. He was a judge, and then he does a snap turn on Flair, and you talk about someone that is with the styles and all that, just like being in Japan, like all the styles, hardcore. Then in the '70s, he was like an NWA World Champion. He was this
Right.
classic technical wrestler, kind of almost, and scientific wrestler, and he was a champion there. And it's like he was someone that always like kind of moved around. He wasn't going to be kind of pigeonholed in one spot. He was a cowboy in that sense, and I always like heard like the reverence like people refer to Terry Funk as, and like there are a lot of people nowadays that um I think you can kind of look at like as modern versions of him or just blend
Yep.
a couple guys up. It's like if you combine like Chris Jericho and John Moxley, I think you get Terry Funk. Honestly, like the reinvention, the
Yep.
hardcore, the scientific wrestling, the just everything. Like I feel like with those two, they kind of make up like the sides of Terry, if you will. And I never heard anything bad about Terry Funk. Like as far as like you always got to check these folks. But like, hey man, was this person doing any racist shit? Was this person doing any bullshit or anything? I've never been led to believe anything about that. Please, I don't even want to know now if something happened, but he was really a do it all type wrestler. Incredible on the promos. Just believability and like
Yeah.
it's like, yo, actually that guy might be crazy. Like,
Yep.
and I believe it was Terry Funk and Jerry Lawler had this empty arena match in Memphis. It's fucking hilarious. If you guys haven't seen it, go check it out, please. Um, you know, there's I saw something going around with Terry Funk wrestling Eddie Guerrero in 1989, and giving this young, unheard of talent all this offense on him while he's a certified main eventer and legend. Um,
Yep.
Things that nowadays people want top stars like crucified for. He was doing back in 1989,
Yep.
and basically saying like, "Yo, there's more than one way to." Present yourself like there's a way to be giving, and there's ways to use your position to help others, and like the earliest example of that is Terry Funk and Eddie Guerrero, and that's him having the vision that a lot of people didn't see at the time. So, what do you make of Terry Funk's passing, James?
I think Terry Funk is one of the pro wrestlers who where similar to Ric Flair, similar to people like that have just multiple Sting, people that have had long careers where he's like, depending how old you are, because their careers span multiple generations, you can literally have a family where like the granddad could say they have saw something about they could seen Terry Funk when he was with Dory tagging. You could have the father saying, "I remember him," and you can have the son saying, "Hey, like I remember when he was old and like he was doing crazy shit. He's like just throwing his body around like a rag doll." And he was really fucking good, like at all that time. And it's interesting to think about our thoughts of Terry Funk growing up, because it's like this is a guy that, because how he's aged, all the mileage, all the traveling, all the hard living, all the farming and living on the ranch and all that shit. Like this is a grizzled guy that athletically does not have it, and he had figured out before anyone else how to extend your career by doing this crazy shit or whatever else. So like,
The
if
fucking
not for
exploding time bomb matches with Onita.
right, all the hardcore stuff with as you mentioned,
Him and
like
Foley.
and he got other people over all the time, right? As you mentioned, the Eddie Guerrero thing. Like, look, man, the New Age Outlaws owe their careers to Terry Funk and Mick Foley,
Yeah. Big
right?
time. And the Road Warriors.
Yeah, that too. So like, there's just so much. There's a bunch of different stories. Obviously, I think one of my favorite, because there's a bunch of them. One of my favorite Terry Funk stories is like Jim Cornette is talking about how he brought him in for Smoky Mountain, and I ended up seeing this off of Botchamania video, and this is the mid '90s, so Funk is in his 50s,
Right.
right, and like mid 50s, so out of nowhere, like Cornette's at ringside managing. I forgot who he's wrestling, but Terry Funk goes to the top rope and hits a fucking moonsault, and Jim Cornette says, "Terry, what are you doing?" And he says that Funk goes, "Carney, I don't know." it's, it's like he just up there, he's just out here doing and trying shit just cause.
Yeah.
And like at 50, there's just a lot of stuff with him, and like the stories, like you mentioned, people are in the chat talking about Japan stuff. Like, I can't really get into the Japan stuff except for, he obviously he helped train a lot of the All Japan guys.
Mm-hmm.
In that back in the day, him and his brother Dory. Um, I don't know what the list is. I have to pull it up to be like who it is. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but they were going down. He decided, to chip in and do the retirement show over there. And it's a big deal. Everyone has the meme of, they're yelling forever.
Forever.
Right. And then the crowd, the
All the
Japanese crowd starts
retirements.
chanting forever with him. Yeah, man, just he's so much stuff. But yeah, like he's one of those guys where it's like I get the news, and one of my first things, like I think of my stepdad, like the one that on the show I mentioned every so often about like something happens with pro wrestling, and it gets brought up, and he goes, "Oh, okay," and it goes on to talk about the story about Dusty Rhodes at Armory.
Mm-hmm.
Like it happened, and like the first thing I thought of was to call him and be like, "Hey, just let you know, Terry Funk died." And he goes, "Wow," and then he started talking about him, his brother, him and Dory.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time to watch Championship Wrestling in Florida and everything. So yeah, it's a major loss. As you mentioned earlier, like just a person that was, as you mentioned, similar to Jericho, like a person that was always ahead of time, always knew what was coming next, very smart for the business, wasn't too caught up on after protecting. I'm not going to do this X, Y, or Z. It was very open in a time when people were just, very on not putting people over, very on protecting their spots, very on like, I am not putting you over unless you are a top star or if you can whoop me in a shoot. That kind of dumb mentality that's out of pro wrestling, and mostly out of pro wrestling, and for the better. The Joshi stuff with Dave Meltzer, I hear it talked about all the time, or not all the time, but I've heard Meltzer say this story. He says about every 6 months, right? And
He dropped
You know,
a great free column too, like
okay,
and right on the it's rare Dave will put something out for free. Just right, he wrote about
Mhm.
Terry Funk's life and career because him and Dave were like this.
Very close.
So
Yeah, and I'm sure he's one of the first people that opened that welcomed Meltzer into the world. You know, back in that time, people weren't having that shit. People wanted to, do all sorts of things. Dave Meltzer. Why the fuck is there a guy, doing a trade magazine about the business?
they wanted to round him up.
Yeah. So, they hear that story about like, hey, you see what they're doing. You hear this crowd. You see this demographic. You see how they're drawing. You see what they're doing athletically. Like people are going to copy what they're doing for the next 20 years. He was fucking right. Um, it's different conversations that we had over last week about certain people, and it's like Terry Funk would have told them, hey, like be more open minded to this stuff. So, um, yeah, that's what I think of when I think of, like you mentioned, Jericho Moxley things. Like when I first think of Terry Funk, I think of John Moxley, and like John Moxley is so much of what I enjoy tuning in for every Wednesday to watch AEW, and like it's very much modern now or modeled and patterned off of Crazy Man Terry Funk, right? Like in Moxley's book about like a lot of times WWE they're telling him to slow down, relax. You're going over the top. You're doing too wild with it. And Triple H says, "Hey, you don't want to be like Terry Funk, ha ha ha." And then Moxley's like, "Fuck you, Terry Funk is fucking awesome." He's right.
Yeah.
He's right. And you see the man's changing in like pace and everything like since he's left WWE, and like the man's had basically a Hall of Fame career in 4 years, just basically by tapping into the funkness. So tapping into the funk, that'd been a better word for the clip or whatever. But yeah, just all time guy. Like, Eddie Kingston thinks he's the greatest wrestler of all time. There are a lot of people that you respect that you enjoy and whatever else that think that Terry Funk is the greatest wrestler of all time. I ain't got no room to disagree with him. Look at the list of career. Look at the people he's influenced. He's up there. He may not be an all-time draw or whatever else, but like his ability to change character, be funny, be vicious, be serious, be technical, be a goofball, be a deathmatch wrestler. Not too many people have the career that can say they can do all that with their character in the ring and also on the microphone.
It's just unlimited range, and like you can he just has this look in his eyes where it's like someone
crazy
else
like
is
a fox, as he says.
Someone else is like this. It's kind of like Jake Roberts, but Jake Roberts is like younger than Terry Funk, where it's just
and
like
more energetic.
Yeah, it's just like man, like that guy. There's something up with that guy. Like this, like he's not like the rest of the wrestlers.
You get the sense of danger and craze without like a raised voice. He raises his voice sometimes, but he can still get you without raising his voice. Macho Man, same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. So definitely rest in peace to Terry Funk, and thank Terry Funk for 60 years in wrestling, damn near like 50 years in wrestling, like because if ECW doesn't go, we're Marty McFly and all this shit, kind of.
Yeah. Hey, so do you have a favorite Terry Funk anecdote?
I have a favorite like from when I was watching. There is a segment on Shotgun Saturday Night with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Terry Funk.
What you're talking about.
Where they're face to face and fighting, and like it's not a match or anything. It's the night before the 1997 Royal Rumble. And I believe Terry Funk so eloquently says, "Your mother's a whore."
Can I add to that story?
Yes.
So obviously, this isn't much of a Bruce Pritchard friendly podcast. We both think he's lying through his fucking teeth.
A lying ass lying liar, like
yeah, a lying ass lying liar. Yes. When he talked about Terry Funk on that about that your mother's a whore thing, man, he said that Vince said, "Hey, Terry Funk's gonna be on here. make sure he doesn't cuss or say anything out of pocket on air because it's cable. And then he goes and says, Terry, so what you plan on doing? Oh, a little of this, a little of that. He's like, well, just let you know, you can't say anything like that. And he goes, because Vince hates being called Junior, even though he is a junior.
Junior,
like, did Junior tell you that? He goes, yes. Look, it's my ass if anything happens. He says, don't worry. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, he goes, your mother's a whore to entice Steve Austin to a fight. And he says, I think he said something along the lines like he didn't even look over Vince's way because he knew that he could feel Vince staring a hole through Pritchard.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then because at the time, I don't believe anything Bruce Pritchard has to say about anything. I found that video on Daily Motion of him when he called Bruce Pritchard he flipped Steve Austin for Bret Hart. He actually said Bret Hart, but it was Steve Austin.
Mm-hmm.
But bro, the face that Steve Austin makes on commentary when he gets his name called out, it's a meme. The way his facial changes when he's on commentary, and all of a sudden he hears Terry Funk say his name. He snapped. He's like, "Wait, what does motherfucker say? He said my name." Yeah. It was incredible. But then the whole thing when they start fighting after he says your mother's whore, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. Yeah. So yeah, man, he was a wild one, a real wild one. Cowboy, didn't care. You fire me, I'll find somewhere else to go. I don't care.
I'm out of here. I gotta go home. My horse is sick. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Fuck this.
Yeah, that story. Yeah. People still don't know whether or not that was real or not. About whether or not he just didn't want to do a job, or is he actually, really that attached to his horse? And it's like, hey man, he's from West Texas. I think he's really attached to his horse like that.
And there's even more and more Terry Funk stuff. I don't even know. So
tons of it. So if y'all got some in the comments, share your favorite Terry Funk stories on here.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah. So I guess now we'll start the show.